So we recently got an update allowing Dracolich to be dyable, and I wanted a set of Dracolich to die for myself for holding Slayer perks and whatnot. So I went ahead and learned the new Vorkath method and decided to go ahead and make a guide on it. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get right into this guide. So here I have the Vorkath team forming Discord up. I believe this is literally discord.gg/Vorkath, but I will leave a link in the description below. And if we scroll down here, they have a bunch of different methods written out in guides and whatnot. And the one that I am doing today here is the solo range biting kill per hour setup, because I don't like equilibrium and I don't want to make new armor sets just for it, so it is what it is. And now a lot of people will look at this and say this is pretty bare bones for a guide, but all it is a screenshot showing a general inventory. Mine's gonna differ from this quite a bit. An example kill usually will show up in the form of a YouTube link, and down here will be the rotation that we are doing today. Now these guides are pretty general, and you can switch a couple things here and there on them if you know what you're doing, and typically you'll be fine. Like for instance, it calls for a Calgarian demon and darkness, but I have done this with Vamp and a Ripper demon and it has worked just fine. Things I wouldn't try changing is really anything in the rotation unless you screw up and have to improv, but generally you'd want to follow the rotation. But small things like this you can change. But I did want to show where I got this rotation from, and so we'll take a look at the gear before I show you an example kill. So starting off with the worn equipment, I have 4 out of the 5 Elite Dracolich pieces. Where the E-Draco gloves would normally be, I have the enhanced Nightmare gauntlets here. This is because in that rotation, you can actually get the snipe benefit of essentially giving you an extra hit in flanking range, because Vorkath will be turned over and facing towards Zamorghiel when you're pressing snipe in the rotation. So it's actually better to just have these here and ready to go. Full Scripture is best in slot for both styles, regardless if you're on equilibrium or a biting setup, so we will definitely be using that, and it's pretty cheap to operate once you obtain one. The perks, by the way, on the Dracolich are C4 R5 or Crackle 4 Relentless 5, Impatient 4 Undead Slayer. Dragon Slayer I believe works on Vorkath, but I can't quite remember. I just go with the undead stuff because that is known to work. It's kind of hard to remember all the stuff that does and doesn't work, so I will just stick with the undead stuff. And on the chaps, I have Biting for Mobile and Ultimatums for Genocidal. I am on a Dragon's Slayer task. I got this from Laniakia and I ran it down to 4. The guide recommends you run it down to 1, but knowing myself, I'm pretty accident prone when it comes to making mistakes in this game, and I would definitely just accidentally kill a dragon somewhere going and doing something random, so I just leave this task on 4 as a precautionary measure. But if you're not accident prone like me, you can just leave the task on 1 to get the absolute maximum benefit out of the Genocidal perk. The perks on my Bulg are P6R1 Aftershock 4 Eruptive 2. If you have a standard Coroming Bulg from before the update where it's Coroming for Eruptive 2, that'll work just fine. If you have the modern perks, kind of the hybrid of both of these ideas on 1, which is I believe what PVME currently calls for, that will also work. The perks on the bow, honestly, I don't think will matter too much, but this has been getting good kills for me thus far. In my quiver, I just have the Dragonbane arrows. We are not going to be messing with Death Spores or full arrows or Wen arrow and nothing else. We're literally just using one arrow type today, and that is the Dragonbane arrows. Standard best in slot ranged ring here, the Stalker's ring with its enchantment. It is definitely better than the Reaver's ring because you are getting critical strike damage on top of the crit chance. The EOF I have equipped here has an ECB inside of it, and then I have a hybrid Zuck cape to round everything out. The only cape that I think is going to matter here is the attack and the defense cape, because you will want some additional accuracy for Zamorghiel just in case, and Sign of Life is just always a nice backup to have, so you can avoid paying death a little bit of extra GP. And moving on to the inventory, it does look kind of like a jumbled mess, but once you understand the big picture idea of it, it's not too bad. But right here I have my melee swap here. I just have Lang swords. I don't bring an EZK personally because it's it's not really needed. And I just then have the armor switch here. The ring is better for melee, so I just bring that. Then we have the full 4-piece vestments and the enhanced gloves of passage, which on their own is just standard best in slot melee kit. In the necklace department, I just have the different EOFs that we will be using. For range, I have a Gloomfire bow instead of a dark bow. I have a SGB EOF instead of a physical SGB. Gloomfire bow seems to line up nicely in this rotation, and it's been accounted for, so my guess is that the rotation was intentionally written for Gloomfire bow because it is more damage than dark bow if you account for it. Even if you're running into hit cap while you're under ECB, that damage will calculate correctly and you will get beneficial results under ECB when using stuff that technically goes over hit cap. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, essentially ECB will take whatever number you are going to heal and turn that into damage on the enemy. This is the original split soul effect, and what most people will think is if you're hitting hit cap, then that means ECB is going to be capped because you can't do any more damage, thus you can't heal anymore. But the game actually calculates the raw damage value and then brings it down to the cap if it goes over it, but the healing amount still calculates on the raw damage number. So say you're supposed to hit something like a 60k hit splat, the game isn't going to let you do that, but the split soul value will still be calced off of that 60k damage figure and then be applied to the target. Even though that 60k gets brought down to 30k because of hit caps, it is one of those niche interworkings on the combat system that is kind of confusing, but once you know it's there, it's pretty easy to account for. My guess is that the SGB EOF here again is to help line up stacks for the Gloomfire spec because it is technically more damage to have a physical SGB, but with how much damage this rotation cranks out already, more range damage isn't really going to make the kills that much faster because you're still running into cooldown issues with the ballista and a few other things that I've noticed when running kills. So it's probably better just to help line up the additional stacks for Gloomfire bow and SGB EOF. Most rangers are going to have that. Most rangers are probably not going to have a physical SGB lying around, so it does help people get into the boss a bit easier. It's one less piece of niche gear that you don't need, so fine by me. The other two EOFs here are for the melee swap. I have my Mercy dagger here. That is the bread and butter for the melee rotation here. Does a lot of damage in a short amount of time, so if you set up for it properly, it can really help out. The other EOF is an Annihilation EOF. How this special attack works is once activated, every hit that you do for a 20-second window will give you a 1% damage increase. So if you do 5 hit splats, then that's going to be 5% additional damage. And it has a cap at 20 stacks. So if you build this up pretty quickly, you will get an additional 20% damage on your melee abilities. Then to round out all of the necklaces, we have a Salve Amulet E here. This is just for massive damage on Vorkath because Vorkath is considered an undead target, which is giving us 20% additional damage. So we will definitely take that where we can. And the rest of the preset is pretty straightforward. I just have 2 Guthix brews and 4 blubbers for my food. This is probably overkill for the food, but at Vorkath, I like to be a bit overkill in general on food. This is one of those bosses where I just kind of mindlessly food to mouth while pressing out the buttons for a rotation and just kind of ignoring prayer flicks. I have Adrenaline Renewal Flask. It's pretty self-explanatory, and it's going to be used with the melee rotation. I have an overload in the preset just so I can sip it whenever I need to, and I don't need to load a different preset at the bank in order to overload again. The rune pouches here, I just have 2 of them here because I will be on the Lunar Spellbook, and this is just so I can have Vengeance and Disruption Shield. It also gives me access to Borrowed Power, but personally I don't use Smoke Cloud in this rotation, and the written rotation doesn't call for Smoke Cloud anywhere, so I won't have to be burning a bunch of Borrowed Power charges. Then to round out the preset, I just have some Vuln Bombs, and I have a Vit Pot, and I do keep a chest here, so that way I can just teleport out once a kill is done, and then claim the loot before going in for the next one. And from the bank preset, I will be grabbing some Lantidime Incense Sticks. I will be using Powder of Penance and Powder of Protection. This will help out when using Salve Amulet. And then I will be using a Ripper Demon. And then for relics, I'm just running the standard best in slot setup of Zerk Fury, Font of Life, and COE. That is enough yapping though about all of the gear. Let's go ahead and run an example kill. Alrighty, we have the preset loaded up and ready to go. And the rotation will start here at the Adrenaline Crystal. So we'll go ahead and hit our DS. Go ahead and put on a D-Bax, hit the spec, grab more Adrenaline, and put our bow back on. Make sure there's no loot to grab, and go ahead and re-enjoin the instance. Hit an Imbue Shadows, an ECB EOF, Surge, and Gricko with a target cycle. Bulk spec into a Gale Shot, and then a Dead Shot into a Gloomfire spec, then SGB, and then a Rapid Fire. Another Gloomfire. A Gricko into a Snipe, and then a Snapshot, and that should be phase. Now it's phase. I should have to do an extra ability because I forgot to Vuln, and then Meteor Strike, Divert, Annihilation spec, a Dismember, stall an Adaptive Strike, and then hit Zerk, Barge, Rend, Overpower, and then Bleed the Flurry. Don't forget to hit the Ballista into a Mercy Dagger EOF. Chaos Roar with an A-Pot, and then another dagger, hit an Overpower, another dagger, and then another dagger, and then a third dagger. And then here I hit Lang Spec into a Punish, and that is a kill. Now, the Adaptive Strike, it's always hard for me to remember the name of this ability. I always think either Deci or Cleave. But when you're stalling that ability, you don't have to release it. The reason you stall it is to give you enough time in order to have it and then Zerk go off, and then you get Barge immediately afterwards. You're not stalling it for any damage reason. It's literally just to give Barge enough time to work up and give you the effect. But then what you can do is just teleport out. Dive over to the bank, hit load last preset, go over to the altar here, make sure your prayers are up, surge dive over, and then you can just repeat the entire process. Now, I'm not going to do that here, but we'll go ahead and go in, and then you just claim your loot, you get your chest, it sits in your inventory all nice and happy, and then you can make all the GP you want. All right, I'll let you guys see the loot from this casket. Wow.